table is full. The table is full.
The table of tat.
Yes, we do need to sort that. Hello, welcome to the programme. 6 years old today, officially, I think. Well, it was a couple of days after the Challenge Cup final when Catalans beat Warrington at Wembley. So, and that band of four of us made the long move from the salubrious south of Leeds to the...
Under the subway.
Yeah, to the more exciting North Leeds. Helped by secret producer who's not here. It was never here. But we're here now. So,
well, happy birthday to us.
Yeah. I'm hoping the video's working. It says it is, but I don't know if my phone's working or not. Welcome to the programme anyway. James is back with us. How are you, James?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, better than the weather, which is rather miserable this evening, isn't it?
Well,
Very
it's
autumnal.
Bank holiday, isn't it?
Well, yeah, although we're set to have some nice weather over the next week or so.
Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be good.
Hopefully on Sunday when I'm out and about. That'll be good. It's undercover at heading, isn't it? So it doesn't matter. Phil, you had a midlife crisis this weekend. How was it?
I didn't have a midlife crisis. I ticked off something on my bucket list which nobody is interested in, but I had fun.
Well, I'd say midlife is a compliment, actually.
Yes, clearly.
Sorry.
Clearly.
Well, mine's my hair at the minute.
A late life crisis.
Be wearing those leather trousers next week. They're a nightmare. What do you need to talk about in rugby league this year? Because it has been because we're a day later than usual. It does feel, you're saying this downstairs, so it does feel like we're very much detached. It's like the Super League show when it was on a Tuesday. It was very much detached from the weekend's action.
It's sort of...
But we're still here.
Last week's been and gone, and next week's sort of due. I was going to say, nos encanta la Liga de Rugby que hacemos for our Mexican
Mexican listener.
Excellent.
Up the Robins, says Mark. Well, we'll talk about them in a bit, because we've got plenty to talk about with them. I almost think... Do we have to start with Whitehaven again? Because, well done Kyle Amor. If I was him now, I'd be quitting, because it can't get any better. 100% record. I assume he's not getting paid loads of money to be the coach of Whitehaven. I don't know. Might get as much as we get for this podcast. 100% record. Can't be beaten. They go to Dewsbury with 14 players and win. He calls them brave, which is within his rights to do so, because he's the coach. Heroes, not brave. Inspirational performance from the men in the blue, yellow and chocolate. But that's not good, is it? 14 players. Where's player welfare? Where's Ryan Brierley telling me about player welfare now? No, all those red cards have stopped. What's going on? Where's the union gone?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it is a phenomenal result, and clearly, there are issues at Dewsbury as well. But that is a fantastic result in trying to get away from the bottom of the league, starting with no players at his one and only training session, to getting 14 on a bus down there and getting them to win. But you're absolutely right to raise the question of player welfare, because presumably all the forwards played much longer minutes than they used to. And you wonder whether that would have been sanctioned in Super League, where we're looking at the amount of minutes that players play in a season. Is it the responsibility of the governing body to say you can't play a game if you've only got 14 players? Presumably in a game you get to the point where you only have 14 players if you get 3 people who can't go back on. So I don't suppose you can regulate for it, but it does seem odd that in the semi-professional game a match can go ahead that of such importance when only one of the teams, which ends up winning, which is even more bizarre, has 14 players.
Imagine the fuss if the RFL said, no, you can't play. Because then everyone would have kicked off and said, we booked hotels in Dewsbury.
And I presume the referee has no jurisdiction. The team sheet is the team sheet.
No. Absolutely, yeah. I think you can play... I'm trying to remember what the laws of the game say, what the limit is on the number of players that you can have on the field at any one go.
I think
it is 9. So they could have had a few sent off, and they still would have been able to play. I get that it's different once you're in match. I don't know. I think I think it comes down as a one-off to the club, and for the sake of the game, to get a game played at this stage of the season. But I don't know what the operational rules say around that, and obviously there will be limits on when you can sign players, and they've obviously gone beyond those dates, haven't they?
Yeah.
I don't know if presumably that applies for loan players as well, does it?
No, I think you can still... Well, no, Hull have loaned Sam Essay, haven't they? So whether that was the last day you could do it and we've gone beyond that. But can you sign amateur players on contract from the local community clubs? I'm not sure when that ends. But I mean, you are of the parish of Dewsbury, and it's almost like their story has gone under the radar. You know,
Relegated.
But relegated somewhat ignominiously. They're over 10 points behind the rest. Huge financial problems apparently as well there, that obviously we're focusing on Whitehavens. Where do they go from here?
That's news to me. I don't follow the club any more than I follow any other club. So you're telling me something I don't know. I mean, I didn't even realise Paul March was coaching Dewsbury, to be quite honest, until I read something at the weekend. It comes back to the same old. I quite honestly, how clubs at that level survive is beyond me. I don't know.
And part of Whitehaven's problems are of their own making, because they've signed quite a few Australians, PNG internationals, and again, you know, you look at the crowd figures and the wages, and you go, these two are not commensurate. But I'm not sure Dewsbury have overspent, or
I'd be surprised, because Mark Sawyer has been there a long time now. I don't know how long it will be, but probably 20 years. I would think it's a long time. So I'd be surprised if that is true. Whether that's a reflection on Mark and his finances and the board's finances, I don't know. But it's a tough competition to get promoted out of League One to then stay in the Championship, particularly because there's 2 going, possibly 3 this year.
And I guess the issue again is, you can do what a Wakefield do, you can do what an Oldham do, but if you don't have the resource to do that with an owner that can put in that significant amount of money, and you get relegated, League One is a shark-infested pool at the moment. How do Dewsbury get out of it? How do you stop becoming a yo-yo team? It's incredibly difficult.
It is, and then again, all the associated costs, as we've talked about before, with travelling to some of these sort of far-flung places, brings its own challenges. And the crowds at Dewsbury, as with probably most teams at that sort of level, have fallen over the years.
I mean, we were talking downstairs just before about, we were looking at Cornwall, which is a drain on the resource of other clubs that have to travel there, but have won 3 games this year. Do we count that as a successful season? Is that development? We always talk about you need to give enterprises time, and I'm all for not judging them on 2 or 3 seasons in League One, but at what point do the rest of the clubs in that division say this is not sustainable?
Well, I guess if you're judging success, do you judge success based on the IMG scores? Because ultimately that's what's determining where teams are playing, and they're being categorised and judged across a whole range of indicators and not just on-field performance. So you'd have to say that if you're gonna rank them, you'd have to look at the IMG scores. I'd have to go back to see what the draft scores were and how far they were down the pecking order. But it comes back to the same question with a lot of these clubs: is what do they bring to the game? If they don't have junior setups, they don't have women's teams, they don't have community clubs that are linked to them. Are they producing
a lot of
the
local
academy
talent? Yeah,
they're not producing academy players to go on to the. So what are they bringing to the game other than, let's say, for argument's sake, a nucleus of 500, 750 fans that, however ardent and passionate about their club, but I don't see what the money that they then get centrally, where that goes and what the benefit is. I appreciate that central money has dropped significantly.
absolutely.
And I think that's probably the challenge that some of these clubs are facing. I don't know, dare I say it, that naturally over the next few years you might see some clubs leave because they realise they can't sustain it. So,
and I think natural wastage has been a policy of the governing body, that they're not going to stand by and prop clubs up. They're going to stand or fall on their own merit.
it still comes back to the same old argument.
But that's not strategic planning.
No, exactly. That's the point. We still don't know who this club is going to be. I don't know when they're going to make that announcement. That's going to come into League One next year. But that's not to say we're going to have all the clubs that are currently there in existence at the end of this year. Such is the precarious nature of
and we can
sport.
see how tough it's been for Newcastle, who have had access to some local talent, university talent, a good coach in Chris Thorne. But again, have not yet managed to jag a win this year. And actually, is there Yeah, played 20 games. Their season's over.
Done now,
yeah.
We've been lucky, haven't we? Because we haven't had a club the size of Wasps disappear, and they haven't come back. They have not come back in any form whatsoever, and they were a big name in rugby union. Phil has asked, how much longer can the sport support 3 leagues, low crowds, sponsorship, no TV deal, etc.? Well, of course, there was a TV deal on the table, but it wasn't worth enough to the clubs to sign up for it. But again, I would say you could pay 16 quid at the weekend to watch a pre-season friendly in ice hockey, so why our clubs aren't being proactive in that?
Well, the biggest expense that clubs will have is players' wages. And I don't think there is a salary cap, is there, in League One Championship?
I think the salary cap in the Championship is the same as Super League, so effectively there isn't one.
Yeah, and unless you agree, all clubs agree to reduce what they're paying players, so there isn't that. Oh, we'll go down the road and they're going to pay us so much more. But the alternative is they don't play rugby league anymore, or they find another sport that might pay them some money.
And one of the things we were saying, and have consistently said, is we are not producing enough players, so there isn't demand in the player pool, which in some respects would drive wages down. And you don't like saying that, because I don't think any rugby league player gets paid what they deserved. But there are some players, particularly in the Championship and League One, who are probably being paid wages that the clubs can't afford in the search for success, whatever that is, whether that's getting out of the division that they're in, or making a playoff, or getting to Wembley, or whatever it might be. But because there aren't loads of young kids coming through that are able to take their spots, experienced guys can command money that clubs can't really afford to pay. So it then becomes a very vicious circle, and how do you break that? But the more you look at what's happening in the lower reaches of League One in particular, and the clubs in the Championship that are going to be cast into that, the more you think maybe there isn't room for 3 professional divisions.
What happened to Cornwall's games all being televised? I know I keep going back to things that have happened, but that was a thing we were told, and
I just think the other thing about it is that when Cornwall were founded, and this isn't having a go at Cornwall in any whatsoever, one of their remits was to use local talent, and I'm not sure we've seen much evidence of that, or we're not talking about great young players from the Cornwall area who are being looked at by Super League clubs that have been unearthed because we've got a club in Cornwall. Now, whether we should have a club in Cornwall is a very different debate about the strategy of the sport, and it'll come up every week about London as they play probably their last home game in Super League for the foreseeable future this weekend. But somebody soon is going to have to come up with some strategy to address what's happening at the likes of Whitehaven and Dewsbury, and conversely what Oldham are doing to pay to get out of that, because I can't see this ever changing.
I just looked at Google as we were chatting the IMG gradings. Surprisingly, actually, North Wales were bottom of the list, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then it goes as working up from the bottom: North Wales, Cornwall, Midlands, Whitehaven, Workington, Keighley, Hunslet, Rochdale, Dewsbury, Swinton, Oldham all got grade C.
Oldham will change because they're moving back to Boundary Park and they've clearly got promoted. But of those, how is that going to change? The story of Whitehaven, if Kyle Amor pulls off, what perhaps seemed miraculous a few weeks ago, and they don't get automatically relegated, and maybe they don't even get into the relegation playoff. If their grading is as low as it already is, you've solved a crisis in the very short term, but you've not really addressed the issue.
When you look at those clubs that are in the Championship got a grade C, Whitehaven, Dewsbury, Swinton, they are the bottom 3 in Championship. So there are commonalities between the two, aren't there, really? But if you were going to judge success, I think you have to judge it on on IMG scores, because that's what ultimately the leagues are determined on.
Yep.
Well, they aren't actually at Championship League One level, but they are if you're wanting to progress. By the way, I don't know why do I have IMG scores and then not have, and you still have sort of automatic promotion relegation, and this bizarre system that we've got this year between Championship and League One, where you have the third bottom in Championship playing the winner of the playoff system in League One. I don't know how we've ended up with that.
It's to try and get 12 clubs in each division. But
when we decided that 12 clubs in each division isn't sustainable. Well, we decided on this programme, not the AFL.
We're not saying that it is or it isn't. We're just saying it's increasingly difficult for. I mean, if
So at the moment, you're looking at based on league tables, you're looking at Whitehaven at home against Keighley, aren't you?
Mm.
Third from bottom against the second from
but
top.
We're saying as well that Oldham, already promoted, big resource behind them comparatively speaking, should be competitive in the Championship. Have got ambition, move back to a ground where they're going to get LED boards if they want, which you wouldn't have got at Staley Bridge, I don't suppose. But if Whitehaven, Swinton and Dewsbury are then relegated into League One, what are the prospects of them getting out of that? And it just becomes harder and harder each year, to the point where you're sticking another team in for the sake of evening up the fixture list in terms of the games that you play every week. But it becomes less commercially viable if a Dewsbury, who are struggling at the moment by their own admission, get relegated, can't get access to the same sort of players that you would if you're in the Championship, and then have to find coach money to Cornwall, maybe to Anglian Vipers, North Wales. They're being asked to do more as a club than clubs in almost Championship and Super League, comparatively speaking, because of the money that they get to pay for those expenses. Something's not quite adding up, and it affects every sport. I think I think there are many a football club in League Two and League One who have pretensions to be bigger clubs than they currently actually are, that are spending ridiculous money on wages for players that they'll never be able to cover those losses. But the amount of money coming into football, there seems to be a way to always manage that. I don't know how you continue for the likes of Whitehaven the way they are currently structured, because finances are not going to come in the foreseeable future.
And if not enough people go and watch them, it's like, I don't want to say high street shops. That's not a great example, but it's true. But it is. People say, oh, the high street, all the big shops have gone, and now it's all vape shops and charity shops. Yeah, but you didn't go and shop in them, did you? So if Whitehaven disappear, or Dewsbury or whoever, Wakefield, I'll throw them into, even though there's no issues at Wakefield at the moment. If they disappear,
well, I think there's an interesting comment in Paul Cook's column in the Current magazine about Whitehaven, because the story was just breaking when we went to print, and he said he'd have a conversation with Craig Murdoch, because obviously they're on Talk Sport together, and Craig is from Whitehaven, and it's only about 10 years ago maybe that Whitehaven were getting between 3,000 and 4,000 for games, and now they're getting between 300 and 400. Has anybody asked the people why they're not going? And again, that would be a pretty good place to start. Is it because you don't feel that there's any hope or there's any meaning in the games, or what would you want to make you go back to support your team? Because they're very clearly, Kyle Amos has been saying, they're very proud people who really do care about the area that they come from, and a lot of Cumbrian players still are gravitating into Super League. So there's some talent there, but why does nobody want to watch their own team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the answer there. No, but it feels from the outside looking in that there's obviously a lot of politics that have gone on with the board and the fallout there, and I suspect they've lost a lot of fans through what's been going on, not looking after people and doing things in the right way. And I'm not sure if there's a disconnect between the community game and the professional game in that area, because the community game is so strong and so popular. People will go and watch Wasp Brow and all the rest of them. In their numbers.
We have to say Egremont, yeah, because they retweeted us last time we said.
Excellent. And I appreciate you're not paying 15 quid or whatever to walk through the gate to watch those clubs. But the game is founded on those clubs, those community clubs, and if you can't engage those into the professional game, then you're never going to get those numbers through the gate, in my view. They're going to struggle to get back to those numbers anyway, because of the way.
Which is what Barrow have done particularly well. They have opened out their facility to the community. They're making it more of a spectator experience. Their gate on Sunday was 1,500. Now, again, they'll want it to be more, but it's economically far more viable if you've got that kind of numbers coming through.
And they've got a women's team.
So is this, does all of that need to be factored into it? And again, that's where gradings come into it. If Whitehaven, and we're not picking on them, it's just they're the topic that but if Whitehaven and Dewsbury are so low in the gradings, that's because they don't have all the things that, like the fan engagement and the quality. The facility's good at Dewsbury, comparatively speaking, and they've got a lot of land around it that's an asset. But you know, I haven't been to Whitehaven for a very long time, but it was always a tough place to go because it was inhospitable. The pegs were high up in the dressing room apparently, which intimidated the opposition. When was the last time you refereed in Whitehaven?
At Whitehaven, it probably wouldn't be all that long ago.
Just when you were forcibly dropped from Super League.
But were those many occasions when I got dropped from Super League, when I wasn't dropped from Super League, but I was dropped from Super League.
Well, people say anything on the internet.
Barrow was always the place we got sent, but actually, to get to Barrow is a lot quicker than to get to Whitehaven. But actually, I always enjoyed going up to Cumbria to referee because you always got a pretty good welcome.
Yeah,
they looked after you well, and the drive up there was nice. It was a nice
Scenic
change from trying to drive down the M1 to get to South London or wherever you might be going and stuff. So I don't know. It's just a shame, isn't it? And I don't. We haven't got the answer here. I don't really know who has the answer.
No, I just think the game owes them more to find an answer, whatever that answer is. And some answers are unpalatable, and some are realistic, and some give you hope. But unless you have answers or a plan where you fit into that plan and you can sell that plan, I think we're not doing. The game are not doing its job.
No, I think the problem with the sport, which is probably ever it's always been the case, is that it relies on an individual or a group of small individuals to hold it up, and the clubs will always be susceptible to these issues where you have, clubs run by individuals. For all the success that Lee are having, if Derek Beaumont walked away, what would happen to Lee? And the same what that happened when Marwan was at Salford. Arguably, they've got better actually since he's left. But where you have a single or a few backers financially filling that gap for a club that otherwise is unsustainable, just doesn't. You're going to lead to these insecurities with clubs.
Could I just say, Jordan Weir does a fantastic job on BBC Radio Cumbria, not only to keep everybody up to date with what's happening, but his passion is the passion that the players that played for Whitehaven this weekend and the fans that still go have. And he is someone that if you don't follow him or you don't listen to some of his commentaries, then it significantly shows you how much it means to people up there. So hats off to him.
Phil says, can you see any other club getting a grade A in the next 5 years? It's going to be the teams who are Bs at the minute who possibly can move up.
I can see Toulouse getting a grade A. That's obviously Wakefield are not far off getting a grade A.
Stand down everything.
Bradford aspire to getting a grade A. They know what they've got to do.
15 points for a grade A, I'm presuming, based on looking at these scores here. And the top of the grade Bs was Salford at 13.8.
Whose grading will change once it's announced, is it later this week, that they are now part owners of their stadium, or their security of tenure is, I don't know if they until we get the contract details, if they're going to be part owners or they've got a golden lease with the council that are buying it back. But obviously that would help them. But they are hamstrung by their crowd figures.
Can they keep those Sharks out? That's the main thing. Get those Sharks out, and then we'll give them a place in the Super League.
I think actually, people were surprised that there were as many grade A licences as they were actually, considering that Hull, who were 7th out of the 7 grade A's, at 15.05. A lot of their off-field hasn't changed, but their on-field's got.
Be interesting if they drop to a grade B.
So it wouldn't surprise me if they dropped to a grade B, unless they've made other improvements off-field to maintain that score.
Well, I think they've got some more financial investment, so might balance that out a little
bit. Dennis asks, will there be a London Broncos next season? Well, the women's team, they might be in the Women's Super League, you never know. But there will be a London Broncos of some sort, won't they?
Well, I'm planning on going down there on Sunday, so I will ask that question.
Are you still going?
Because I think that that'll be very much dependent on, clearly, you were talking about owner. What does David Hughes want to invest next year if the chances are that for the foreseeable future that avenue to Super League is blocked off? Will his investment end? And if it does, that clearly will have an impact on who the London Broncos are next year. We know that, and again, Mike Eccles said it very eloquently, that a player a week is being picked off by other Super League clubs. So they're going to have to start with a full part-time squad. I think they've had a few full-time players this year, not many, which is even more remarkable that they've been as competitive as they have. But yeah, I think somebody will need to have a conversation with David Hughes about either his ongoing investment or what the alternative is if he's, or somebody like him is not around.
With a score of 8.07, they were the bottom of the Grade B.
Huge amount of work to do.
And
that's the other issue, that whether they finish bottom of Super League or not, it's everything else surrounding the club that is still an issue. So yes, I think there probably will be a London Broncos, but what they will look like, how competitive they'll be, whether they're linked to their community game as strongly as they need to be. All of that will come out in the wash. Whether Mike Eccles, who's clearly done a brilliant job, will stay, because you'd think that, I would like Huddersfield to appoint Luke Robinson. We've said that right from the very beginning, that Ian Watson was dismissed. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were looking at or talking to Mike Eccles.
He's not an Australian assistant coach, so...
But he clearly has done.
Well...
I mean, again, we reevaluate Mark Applegarth, don't we? We always said that the job that he did at Wakefield, with the resource he had at Wakefield last year, the dignity with which he held that position, that clearly, although he was held responsible in some way for the plight they were in, and they wanted to spend big and get Darrell and all his contacts, Mark Applegarth did a really good job. York have seen that, and they're on the verge of the playoffs. So I wouldn't be surprised if... I think it would be negligent if you weren't looking at Mike Eccles. I think he's done a fantastic job. Although he is the reluctant coach and keeps saying, I never wanted to be the coach. But
they always say that, though, don't they? They always take the jobs when they're offered. Why do Bradford deserve an A, says Les?
No, they don't at the moment. But I think of all the clubs that are top B gradings, they're the one that have aspirations to try and get to A as quickly as they can, which is why buying the lease to Odsal is so important to them. So they're already third. They could be in the grand final. What is it? The championship playoff final is going to be called. So on the field, that you look at their signings, they're starting to get to a level where they're going to be competitive in that division at the top end. The aspiration to them being A comes surrounding it with Odsal and the redevelopment and the spectator experience. Their crowds...
But they don't need to be in A. They just need to be the top end of the league.
But they know that if they get to A...
Yeah.
So when they get the...
Because at the moment they're 14th, so they only need to climb two positions and they're in Super League.
When they get the lease on Odsal, what they're going to do with it that they haven't done in the previous time that they owned the lease?
They've got new investment, and I think part of that is contingent upon making the best of their asset, because you can buy all the players in the world, but that isn't going to get you too many more grading points. Making Odsal an asset for the sport by it being habitable and usable, and obviously increasing their fan base, but they're still one of the top attendances in the championship, so they're not a million miles away from a grade A. So it's not that we think they should be grade A.
That's a damning indictment, isn't it?
It's that their aspiration is clearly to be a grade
A. Denny says Broncos only have 4 players on pay to play. Wimbledon deal is up. Rosslyn Park is said to be a future home. What's Rosslyn Park like? Is it a bit of a...
It's where the women play. But the trouble is, if you keep becoming nomadic, you will never progress.
I mean, going back to the IMG scores again, at the moment as it stood, Castleford won't be in Super League next year.
Castleford are pinning their hopes on the changes they've made to their ground.
They need to get
will get them in a big screen and the seats in the Princess Street. I think they've looked at what the problem for Castleford is the same as any of the other clubs jostling for who might be in Super League next year. They don't know what scores the others are going to get that are around them. So they may say, oh, we've gone up from 13.5 to 14.5, so that should be enough. But Toulouse might suddenly be 15.
It's a scramble in that area, because with between sort of Bradford, Castleford, Lee, Wakefield, Toulouse probably. Are
they going to do it like the Eurovision Song Contest scores at the end? Are they going to Brian Carney's going to stand there and reveal them one by one.
Well, why not? Make it dramatic.
I mean, the one thing we can...
eyeballs on it.
The one thing
West
we can
Wales
give
Raiders,
Sky
no point.
is an event.
Game call.
Yeah.
What was it? Is that what they called it?
Club call.
Club call.
Club call. Careful.
Yeah.
Have you ever upset any groundsmen, by the way?
Oh, probably by walking on the pitch, and ignoring a sign that says to stay off it.
Do you call them psychopaths or anything?
But not to that extent. No.
That's when you fall in a hole that the groundsman's dug and he gives you the shovel and you're just digging deeper.
Why is it called the bench when it's not on a bench? They do it in a stand. Why is it? Sky, you're lying to us. Carson says, talking about ratings in Huddersfield, should owner finance teams get a lot of minus points? They have no financial future without their owners.
They get less. They already get. The financial model penalises them for having single owner ownership.
I mean, Phil says if we get to 12 or 14 Grade A clubs, will they pull up the drawbridge and scrap promotion relegation? We're a long way away from...
No, I think again, we're guessing IMG because they don't do interviews. We can only go on the one interview they ever did when they came in. Their plan would be that if they got to 16, particularly if they got to either 18 or 20, they would look for 2 conferences. They just want Grade A clubs because Grade A means you're sustainable and they don't care how many there are. But if you're going to split into conferences, you probably do need 20. Which is what Australia are looking at. One of the reasons that 17 is not a great number at the moment in the NRL, although it's been arguably the most successful year for that anybody can remember in terms of attendances and television ratings, and the fact that they're going into the last couple of rounds of the season and 5 clubs are vying for the last top 8 place. What they want are 20 in the NRL, so they can have 2 conferences of 10. If you can get 20 Grade A clubs over the next X number of years, and that could be long after
I'll still be alive.
Welcome to the podcast. It's 22,224.
Then that's what there's no limit. There is no limit. The problem we've got is players. We do not have enough players to people 14 teams at the moment.
Can't see us ever getting to the point where you've got 20
no.
based on the current grading system.
No. You'd have to look at external investment that we were talking about last week about the potential of the NRL coming in, and then wanting to fund areas to give them up to 20 teams. But that's such a long way off that it's probably not even worth thinking about.
Could be the US. Oh no, it's not the USA because they're fighting again in the most predictable thing ever. No one can explain what's going on in America. Can we should just give up on America?
Well, if Steve Mascord can't get us to the bottom of it, nobody can.
So we've given up on America. John Wilkin versus Groundsman. That's been Groundspeople. That's been done. Anything else happen off the field last week?
Kyle Felter signed for.
He has. He's the 3rd top scorer in the NRL. I see it in the paper here, so that's exciting.
32. So. Mixed feelings from some of the St Helens fans, but I think he's a great signing. Proven finish. You're losing Tommy Makinson, one of the Super League's most proven finishers. You replaced him with one of the NRL's most proven finishers. I think that's a really good signing for Saints. They're going to look slightly different next year. We all, whether Paul Wellens wants to call it transition or not.
They're not in transition.
They're
in crisis.
To get Tristan Saylor and Kyle Felt is about as good as you can do with overseas recruitment at the moment, bearing in mind that we're not fishing in the top levels of the ocean.
Leeds are going to win Super League. I'm convinced of this now. I know you're convinced they're going to win the top 6.
Leeds women?
No, Leeds men. Leeds men. They're going to win all 3 grand finals now. I'm going back on this now. No, they are. They hammered Catalans because Catalans are rubbish.
They didn't hammer them.
They're going to make it.
It was a very professional.
I didn't watch it because I was watching the Warrington game because I had them on the handicap, so I thought I'd better keep an eye on that.
There was one ridiculous stat that came out of the Leeds Catalan game.
Is it the penalty count?
No. That was Steve McNamara's beat, but it was only 5-3. Yeah. Which is not to say that they didn't deserve more, but it wasn't a huge gap. No, goal line dropouts. 7-0. I mean, Leeds don't normally get 7 goal line dropouts in a season.
Leeds have got no halfbacks, and you get 7.
But
what's going on?
That is an astonishing stat, and that's one of the reasons why Catalan didn't have as much ball as perhaps Steve felt they should have had in the second half and got penalties and 6 against. So they just never had the ball. So I think if Leeds have got potential banana skin this week, but their next 2 games are London and Hull. If they can win both of those, they're going to be putting real pressure on a faltering St Helens and a Catalan that you would say probably might not win against Wigan this week. And once that dynamic changes so few games into the end of the season, it starts to become interesting. But I don't think Leeds are quite good enough to win the grand final in the men.
Before we get into all the games, which game did you watch this week, James?
I watched the Leeds Catalan game. I reviewed that game. Yeah.
So don't ask me about penalties.
So penalty count.
Well, it actually finished 3-6.
Oh, well, there you go.
Not 3-5, but I don't have all my notes in front of me. But it's like, what's that phrase about?
When you watch it, you go through and go, "That's a penalty. That's a penalty."
Yeah, and that should have been, and that wasn't given. And my view was that Catalan probably pushed a little bit in the ruck. They probably could have been sanctioned a little bit more than they were, actually.
So actually, Steve McNamara was completely wrong, and he should have been.
Happy with it. What's that? I'm trying to remember the phrase.
We did well on the penalty count. We could have been worse.
Lies, damn
lies,
and
and
statistics.
Yeah.
Is that I think I'm doing this from memory. I think there were only 2 penalties given in the second half to Leeds, and 1 given to Catalan. But once you have a game with a low penalty count, you can very easily get a swing.
Mm.
So if you only give, you only gave us 1 penalty and it came in the last minute. Yes, but you only gave the other team 2.
Yeah, but you've got to level it out by the end.
And it's 50% more, or it's doubled. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. I thought the game was probably, it was pretty even. I thought. I don't think Catalan was far away as perhaps the scoreline said. I don't know.
If Arthur Romano had scored halfway through the second half, and that would have closed it to a really nervy finish for it. Leeds went up the other end on the back of that and scored, and suddenly that 12-point turnaround and the game's gone.
I didn't think it was a great game, by the way. I didn't think you were looking
at very conservative.
Yeah, boring.
All right.
No, I looked. I was thinking, well, here we are. Another Australian coach has come over. What is he doing that's any different?
Focusing on defence. It's making them harder to break down.
It's just boring. You want to watch entertaining. And from what I could see, and I didn't watch any of the Hull KR game, that Hull KR were able to play a little bit more entertaining style. You see that with Salford. I just think, are people getting disengaged by the sport? People will say it's because of the way that the referees and the RFL's gone with disciplinary. That's one argument. The other argument actually might be the way the game's played and the way that many coaches are coaching in such the same way that actually it's becoming quite repetitive.
Although the bizarre thing is 13,000 people turned up at Headingley and only 3,500 at Salford.
It's because you've got a core audience, isn't it?
But again, Wigan played a style of football in Sean Wayne's last year that was materially affecting the Wigan crowd going, even though they had the core. That hasn't yet happened at Leeds. There's almost a feeling of optimism to play that way because it now makes them.
Yeah, I'm not. By the way,
but I know what you mean.
I
actually the tries were really good.
But what he's clearly had to do, you first thing you always fix up is the defence.
Yeah, it's the easiest.
Cut out the nonsense with the short dropouts and kick-offs, which clearly not working, and just go back to basics. So I get that.
But the tries they're scoring are very entertaining. They're from long range and well set up.
Yeah, no, it can become as a sport, but we're in danger sometimes of always saying it's the best sport in the world, but it can be quite monotonous.
Yeah, 5 drives and a kick.
And the bizarre thing is, of course, the biggest sport in the world is monotonous a lot of the time.
Well, I think
it's bizarre, isn't it? It's utterly bizarre. But
that happens with professional sport when you've got athletes on both sides that are so fit and honed that they cancel each other out.
Mm.
And the money's important.
By the way, on that race for the top 6, you were sort of saying Leeds are going to win in the grand final.
I didn't say that.
I actually think when I was looking at the fixtures the other day, I think it's going to be tough for those teams who are not in the 6 to get in the 6.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I've not had a single penny on Leeds winning the grand final, but
you want to be playing your big games at the end of the season. So if your last 2 fixtures are against sides that are at the top, there's no point you getting in the top 6 unless you know you can win those games.
So Leeds have got in September. Leeds play
London, Wigan, and Hull KR.
Yeah, London, Hull. So you'd fancy them beating those 2 teams, and then play Wigan away.
But I think once they beat, if they do beat those 2 teams, the pressure is then on the teams above them.
It is. So
if they get in the 6,
so you'd be then looking at Leeds with two wins out of 4 potentially.
Well, yeah, but I think again, if you get to the last weekend of the season and Hull KR have qualified in the top 2,
they may rest
then you need to rest Mikey Lewis. You need to rest Elliot. The guys that you need for the semi-finals. even though you've got a week off, and yes, any coach will say every game's important to us, you've also got to protect your assets a little bit. So the next 2 games are actually more important than the last 2 games, which are the harder ones, because if you can sneak into the 6, everybody's playing everybody else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at Lee. Lee, you've got.
I think they play Hull KR
Warrington at home. They're
which
away at Castleford, so you'd expect them to win that. Lee then play Hull KR at home, which is a tough fixture, and then they play St Helens at home, which is obviously a banker now, isn't it?
Well, but Saints might need to win that to be in the 6. That becomes a much harder game.
It's not an easy run-in for them, is it?
No.
And then you look at Catalan. Play Wigan at home this week.
Which you'd say they're second favourites.
Do you say that's near a cellar as well? Or?
Yeah, sellout.
They then play Salford away.
Which again, massive.
Yeah. They play London at home, you'd expect them to win, and Hull away.
So they get the bottom 2 teams at the end, but what happens if you're out?
Already. Each of those 3 teams I can see winning 2 games. They need a third, don't they? But the challenge is with the gap. Skipping back to the table.
But also, it's
Leeds are 2 points behind Catalan.
So they need to win 1 more game.
And what's the points difference comparison to Catalan?
The points difference.
46 plus for Catalans, 27 for Leeds. So there's not much there. No,
but if they win the 2 games against, it's going to change. Yeah. If Catalan lose their next 2 and Leeds win their next 2, going into that last.
And by the way, the team I haven't mentioned really in all that is St Helens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
who've got a great points difference, which might
despite being heavily beaten this week.
They play Huddersfield away.
No, you'd say on what we saw this week should win that, but not easy. They still haven't got many players coming back.
Warrington away,
which is enormous.
Castleford at home.
They should win, but they lost at Cass.
Yeah, and Lee away.
Which it could be huge, because that could decide which one of them is in the 6.
Please tell me, by the way, that Huddersfield and St Helens on Sunday, before the men play, the women are at 12 o'clock. Please tell me that's at the John Smiths, otherwise that adds more to the fuel to the fire that it's just a complete shambles.
Well, it says it's 2 o'clock here, Huddersfield St Helens women, and the men's is at 3 o'clock, is that right?
So I don't
unless they're playing. I'd be interested to see that game if it's played on the same pitch.
I don't think that now that Huddersfield Town are playing that they will be allowed to play 2 games. But can I mention another fixture that I do not understand, because we don't liaise as much between the various elements of the game that we laud being inclusive and diverse. Leeds Rhinos men are away on Sunday at 3 o'clock in London. Leeds Rhinos wheelchair are away on Sunday at 2 o'clock against London. But because the wheelchair team isn't part of the Broncos, there's no way of bringing at the moment those 2 fixtures together. And if you could play the wheelchair one at, say, 12 o'clock at an indoor venue not a million miles away from Wimbledon, you would be doing a favour for fans that are travelling down there. You might get more of an impact and a push. But you can't do both at the moment, which makes no sense.
I'm going to rain on the Hull KR parade like the weather today in Leeds. This could be their 2017 Castleford season, where they get one shot of everything falling their way. Now, granted, they're not as clear at the top of the table of Castleford, where, of course, they're not even clear on points. It's just points difference.
Tell you what, they don't have easy games. We're looking at their running. Sorry, I'm being boring looking at running.
No.
Hull KR at home to Salford.
Massive.
Away at Wigan. Away at Lee. And at home to Leeds.
It's every game is meaningful.
Every game matters. Games. Everything matters.
Well, they're playing Lee and Leeds, who are fighting to be, either get in or stay in the 6, and obviously Wigan towards the top end as Salford are competing. So
well, the Wigan game arguably is for the League Leader Shield, the way things are going.
Maybe the league table only doesn't lie after all the rounds are played. Maybe that's the case. Just before we get on to Hull KR's win, good defence is entertaining, James says. Phil, Penrith versus Parramatta in the prelims a couple of years ago was superb viewing. A good scramble event is a good try, says Carson. Only the French don't like a good defence, because he likes to keep the French.
I mean, this is true. There are games that are very physical and defence orientated that can be really entertaining. I don't know what that score was at Elland Road between Australia and New Zealand.
Was it 16-14?
It was fairly low, but that was one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about there is the quality of the game.
Yeah.
low errors, and it's not just completion for completion's sake. That's quality just really all over the park, which is what you'd expect with two of the best teams in the world.
And the fact is, you can still, in a very defensive game, have great attack. It's just the defence is too good.
Yeah.
Whereas there was a little bit of safety first, particularly for Catalan, which is understandable with the run of form that they're in and some of the players that they were missing in their spine and the leadership that's lacking. When Michael McAlorum doesn't play, they are a different team, and that's no slight on Alrix da Costa. It's just you need that experience in the middle of the field. Leeds are finding their feet again under a new coach. It was a game that I thought was quite exciting, but didn't have a lot of flair. Whereas you can have that 16-14, and there was loads of flair. Despairing tackles and half breaks that got stopped by great defence. We're not saying that a defensive game isn't something that people want to see. It's what are the tactics of the teams in that game to get them to where they need to be to score some points.
So the Helen 6, Hull Kingston Rovers 42. The problem with all these Saints youngsters coming through is they're all wearing scrum hats and they all look the same. So get some different coloured scrum hats for a start. But a great performance from Hull KR, obviously. Joe Burgess down the right wing. 4 tries. It's a shame, isn't it? Why did more people get upset that John Wilkin said something stupid rather than Joe Burgess retweeting Tommy Robinson? Don't understand that. But anyway, 42-6. Mikey Lewis again running the show. He should be Man of Steel, Mikey Lewis. He's not going to be Man of Steel, though, is he?
Well, again, he's in a team where the accolades are being spread, so we probably won't get him.
It's all those ex-Wakefield players they've got.
Minchella as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But Tyrone May, everybody talks about who is the signing of the season. You'd arguably say with the way Hull KR are playing at the moment and the freedom now that Mikey Lewis has got, it's Tyrone May is arguably the best signing of the season. And you look at Catalan and say, why are they not as effective as they'd be? Well, yes, they lost Sam and they lost Mitchell Pearce, and Michael McAlorum has probably missed more games than he's played, but they haven't got Tyrone May, and that's not coincidence either.
One of our resident Warrington fans, Kevin's been on. Hull Kingston Rovers seem to be getting better every week. I don't think they're going to run out of steam, as a lot of people are saying. Carsten says Lewis is Kingston Rovers' weak spot. If you get under his skin, he's losing it. He's a better Jake Connor. Oh, come on, Carsten.
The great thing about Hull KR is the settled squad that they've got. It's very rare at this stage of the season that you can pick from strength and you can make tactical choices going into games, or you can pick the same team every week to the point where you've done what you wanted to do and you can rest some of them. But, and I hope this doesn't happen, key injuries at this time of the year that players don't have time to... I mean, let's talk about Tommy Makinson. The likelihood is now, unless he has his ban overturned tonight or reduced, he may not play a home game at St Helens again. As a coach, you cannot legislate for one of the players that you need out there to make you the yardage, to get you on the front foot, may not play for you again this year, or might have one game to when he comes back. And the Hull KR are, again, in that washing machine of at what point do you withdraw them, at what point do they pick up an injury that you can't solve, at what point do they get a suspension that you didn't need. There are key positions, and at the moment their key positions are incredibly strong and firing every week, and you want that to continue. You really do. I'd love them to get to Old Trafford.
Well, the game needs different teams there, doesn't it?
And it needs new players like a Mikey Lewis to sell to the wider world. I think Mike is terrific at the moment. I think he's mature. You can actually visibly see how he's matured this year. He's
backing it up. He's winding people up, but he backs it up, doesn't he? That's the thing.
I'm not sure he just does wind people up anymore. I think he's got far more to his game than that now. And I think he's dominating games like this week against the bigger teams, who are supposedly the better teams, rather than a standout in a game that perhaps I don't like to use the word lesser team, but it's easy to shine when the opposition aren't throwing as much as you. He had yet to do it in some bigger... Well, the way he played at Warrington, sensation. Dominant in this game against... He's doing it against the teams that will test them the most, which is to his credit.
I'm sure there'll have been... Because it was the reunion, wasn't it? That's Headingley on Friday. I'm sure there've been players in those great teams who were much better against teams at the other end and didn't shine as much as.
Well,
that's what teams.
Classic
teams
was Tony Carroll, who came over with a brilliant reputation from Australia. You'd love watching him play against Wakefield because he'd get 4 tries, but I don't remember ever him doing anything against maybe a Wigan or a St Helens.
We're good now.
Yeah,
he won't score 4 tries against us now.
But there are players like. Whereas I think Mikey's moved out of that now into can control a game.
There's nothing new to say about St Helens, is there? They're still where they were 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Nothing has changed. They haven't got players back, and when they do get them back, they either get injured again or get suspended. And the Saints fans I speak to are all of similar opinion that it's not the young players letting them down, it's the more experienced players who are not standing up at this point. And you've got to ask, why aren't they doing that? That's the opinion of people who pay their money on the terraces. That's not me sitting on the sidelines having an opinion. That's people on the sidelines saying, the young players are doing their best, coming into a team that's not performing, but some of the senior pros around them are not doing the same thing. And I don't know how you change that.
I think if you take the likes of Wellesby and Walmsley and Clark and Lomax out of that team, it's very hard for the young players to shine. I don't know who the necessarily experienced players are that you'd be making that accusation against, but you've like Catalan, who seem rudderless at the moment. You've lost James Roby. You've lost Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook. That has to have an effect.
He's not made a comeback either, James Roby. He's not doing.
I asked Louis.
Is he not bothered? No.
I said, was he tempted when he saw Sam put the boots back on?
Is he fireman though?
Yeah, he's doing his training. Could do some firefighting at St Helens.
Liverpool's women haven't played a game there yet, so we can't blame them on the pitch yet. So that'll be the next thing. But they had a nice little the Saints logo cut into the pitch and everything. It's like the grounds people are showing off now. They've got a point to prove.
What, John Wilkins ex-ground?
Who can we criticise? Who'll get their union reps to write a statement about us. What a bizarre world rugby league is. Absolutely bizarre. So there's nothing more to say about Saints, but they need to do something this week when they are on the road at Huddersfield, who were absolutely battered by Salford. 60 points to 10. 32-0 at half-time. I don't want to say, is this the result that takes Luke Robinson out of contention? Because I don't know what you can say about Huddersfield. These are two slightly inconsistent teams, but Salford are more consistent than not. You know what I mean? They're a strange one. They're fourth in the table, but they could easily drop out of that in a couple of weeks.
But their points difference is 18, which when they've just won 60-10 shows you that there's been an element of inconsistency this year, that when they've won well, but they've also taken 2 or 3 hidings. But, I think that's just a shocking result for the Huddersfield players. I don't think that's a reflection on Luke Robinson.
Leeds have appointed Brad Arthur for next season, and they've made that decision now, and everyone knows now going forward, whatever happens to Leeds this year, we know where they're going next year.
Yeah, they know their pre-season is now planned. He has categorically said it's going to be long and tough. Everybody knows what
they can't wait.
Yeah, they've all put their hands up going, good, I'm so glad you're here.
Running around the park, snow, all that kind of stuff. Huddersfield, no idea. Players have got no direction. The club's got no direction. They're just bobbing along. We don't know what's going to happen to them next year. So the players can just go.
Well, I thought it was interesting what Simon Grigg said last week. Not this, where they're improved this week at Wigan, where he basically said there's some things he's wanted to say, but because he knows he's not going to be in charge next year, he's not really able to say them. Because, you're a player, you turn around and go, yeah, but I'm not really bothered what you think. It's somebody else's coach next year. I would have thought that the Huddersfield players would have an element of professional pride in them, knowing that they're either trying to impress Luke Robinson or the next person who's coming in, who will go and have a meeting with Luke Robinson and say, well, which of these players do you think are reliable? Can you build a team around? He goes, well, after what I've seen this week, none of them. It's just that it was bizarre.
Yeah, I didn't see the game, but you just based on the scoreline, you just think they've packed up and they're done. 24's season's done for them. That's the impression that you get. You'd like to see a response this week, wouldn't you? If you're a Huddersfield fan, you'd expect to see.
But again, as a Huddersfield fan, you don't need to have a response at this time in the season. You just hope that for the last 5 or 6 games, they will just give everything they could. Maybe some of the players know they're not going to be there next year.
Newcastle Thunder lost by 46 points away from home, and their team is pretty much a bunch of people thrown together. They're not getting paid tens of thousands of pounds of some of these players that Huddersfield will be getting paid. So I know it's a daft thing to compare, isn't it? But you can accept them losing by 50, 60, 70 points. And the same for Cornwall at Oldham because of the difference in money.
So Huddersfield have got 4 consecutive home games to finish this season.
Yeah, because they didn't play 6 out of 7 away when the pitch was...
Saints, London, Warrington and Castle at home.
Now, whereas on Sunday you think, well, they've got Saints, they're in a bit of trouble, but
they've got London and Castle. They almost don't want to play those games in a way, don't they? Because if they lose at home to London, which to be quite honest is not beyond the pale based on last week, and then they play Cas.
It's an attitude thing. It's purely an attitude. It's not a talent thing.
No, that's entirely what it is.
And that's the most disappointing thing. If you're Ken Davey and you've put as much money as you have into that team, and even if you know players... Now, take Jermaine McGilvray as an example. Would he have, in his last few games for Huddersfield, when he had a bit of resentment about being released, and, probably hadn't signed his Wakefield deal or knew whether he wanted to play on or not, I don't remember anybody saying he isn't giving everything he's got for that team. Clearly, some players did turn it in, and the younger ones you can forgive because what do they do when there's a tidal wave coming towards them and they haven't got the experience to cope with that. There are other players who are being paid very good money wearing a Huddersfield shirt that
but I think it goes back to Richard's point is that without the direction, the clarity about what's happening next year,
well,
who are they performing for other than for themselves? And I get that, but if somebody's coming in,
you're right.
So the worst thing you can accuse a professional sportsman of doing is giving up. But you can't look at London, who have no certainty whatsoever. Well, they do have certainty what's going to happen, but in a different way. They haven't given up.
No,
they haven't given up. They're trying it out. It's an awful thing to say. You don't accuse people of not trying, do you? But the performances aren't there to say you don't lose by 50 points away from home to Salford, who are a decent team.
To a team who you've beaten a month before.
It doesn't add up, does it? It doesn't add up.
Is that? I mean, I was just googling to find the answer. I don't know. I wonder if that is the highest points conceded this year in a game in Super League. Wouldn't surprise me.
And Salford didn't score for the last 15 minutes.
Cube's on the rack. It's not good if you playing the handicaps in play. London must have lost by a bigger
Did
score.
they concede 60 odd against Warrington at home?
And Hull have had some big scores, didn't they? They had that period.
But it'll be up there.
But yeah. Hull lost at Wigan 22-4, which I tried to watch bits of, but I was working, and it seems like it was just a performance where Wigan went through the motions, got the win, and having had some difficult weeks recently, points on the board, and they're level on top of the tables. That's all that matters.
Still not playing with the fluency that Matt Peake will need them to play with. But again, I think you've got to put some of that down to the renewed commitment that Hull showed. And again, they know that quite a lot of their players are leaving. They know that the coach coming in is going to want to play a slightly different style next year. I do think that one of the biggest bright spots for Hull this year has been Lewis Martin. Every time I see him, I think he is superb. I mean, he's still got some rough edges to his game, but you'd expect. But more often than not, he carries with venom as a young winger. He's not frightened to take defences on. He'll get back and make a tackle. I think he's been sensational this year. And if out of all this adversity, Hull get a group of young players that are going to take them forward, that's what I can't say for Huddersfield at the moment. And you can almost see that whilst there are limitations to what Simon Griggs feels he can do because he's not going to be the head coach next year, they're starting to look like a team that if you're a season ticket holder at Hull, I'll give them one more chance next year. The kids that have come through, some of the guys they've signed, new coach coming in. And again, I don't want to keep...
Who is that coach? I've forgotten.
John Cartwright.
Oh, right, yeah.
I don't want to have a go at Huddersfield, but if I'm a season ticket holder there at the moment, I'm not buying next year.
No, I think this programme is well established that we just have a go at Huddersfield.
Well, I suppose you could have the same argument there. So Hull lost, didn't they? I'm reminding myself the results. I forgot. Hull lost at home, didn't they? 29-4 to London. And so...
Well, that was at Magic.
That was at Magic, yeah. They got hammered.
Yeah, sorry.
Were you in the Super Box for that? We haven't asked you about your Magic experience yet.
That was the game I missed. That was the first game of day one, wasn't it? But I suppose the point is there that they know their coaches and they still didn't perform. But does that defeat the argument we've just presented on Huddersfield?
No, because the thing about Hull is they've got a lot of players missing, either injured or suspended, and they're putting their faith in youth, and it's sort of working. Because one thing you get with youth is great inconsistency. Yeah. But Huddersfield, I look at that team and I go, if you were in charge of retention at the moment and you look down that list of players and you said, even though they're in contract, who would you want to keep? Who's overperforming at the moment? Who's trying the hardest to...
But all those decisions will have already been made.
Yeah. But I don't see anybody that can go, you can build a team around them, or if you had the work rate of, if you had, I think Ashton Golden is the epitome of a guy who never gives up. If you had 13 of him, you'd be a much better team.
So what I don't understand is if you're going back to Huddersfield, sorry, but Ken Davey made a decision to get rid of Ian Watson.
Yep.
Yeah.
But has he not
With
got
no
any plan in place about who's coming in? Like Leeds seem to be sort of working behind the scenes. I'm guessing on Brad Arthur.
Yep.
That was the rumour. Unless they're intending on just appointing Luke Robinson. But if you're going to do that, well, why not just announce it?
Well, exactly.
If you're then trying to hope that the results pick up so you can announce it off the back of it, it all falls flat on its face. If they lose the last few games of the season,
they're going to get one of those wheels that people use on the internet to make decisions and stick all the assistant coaches in the NRL on there and spin it and see who's going to be. But it's not going to be Jason Dimitri because he's gone to Papua New Guinea.
But I suspect that's not a full-time role.
Well,
so he could probably still be.
What about if they get an NRL team? Could he do that as well? Wigan's try-score. I've been holding the paper up like this. If you've been watching, you think, why is he holding the paper up? Why was he reading? He got bored. No. Jacob Douglas, number 28. Zach Eckersley, 26. Jack Feynman, 30. Junior Nsemba, 21. All players coming through at Wigan. They're try-scorers in that game. What haven't we mentioned in Super League? London 12, Leigh 32.
12 all for a while. But Leigh are looking like the team that if they get into the sixth late on, you don't want to play.
Yeah. And Warrington beat Cass 28-6 with their Hall of Fame coach Sam Burgess flying back in.
Kai Taylor-Ray.
What a man.
Playing instead of Matt Dufty. From East Leeds. Scored a wonder try in only his second game.
John Bateman scored a try.
He did.
He's back. So well done, Warrington, who are third. Everyone's going for a Hull Cow Warrington grand final. Which would be,
don't rule out Wigan.
Which would be interesting.
I think given
if Bevan French is back in the next couple of weeks, it's a different dynamic.
I agree. I think it's difficult to look past Wigan.
Friday night, the TV game is Hull Cow versus Salford.
Interesting game.
Yeah, Leigh Warrington as well. Saturday, it's Hull FC Castleford at 3. Catalans Wigan at 8. And on Sunday, Huddersfield versus St Helens on the BBC. And Leeds versus London versus Leeds, rather, to get the right way round. The other Sunday game. So
just on that BBC thing, that's not working, is it?
No.
The red button
Not
stuff was just a waste of time at the weekend.
I think the Huddersfield St Helens game's on BBC 2 this week. But the red button game where they just take all Sky's coverage.
But then at half time,
don't have anything at half time.
There's no highlights or anything.
What are you doing?
I've got sick of seeing Freddie Flintoff's thing. I'm sure it's very good, but I don't care.
I just think if Rugby League fans don't know it's on, then what hope in hell do we have of anybody else knowing it's on? John Wells was doing the commentary, wasn't he?
He was doing London and Leigh.
Whatever the game was, whatever.
No, he did the Wigan Hull.
Did he do Wigan?
Yeah.
With Courtney.
Yeah.
I must have been flicking between the two. Oh yeah, Stuart Pike did.
Yeah, because I couldn't get the Sky Sports thing working on my laptop, so I couldn't watch.
I only flicked on for a minute.
Yes.
And then I flicked it back off again, but the level of interest I had in that game. No, I was busy, to be honest, but didn't come across great as a production. I just think it's buried. It's hidden away.
I mean, they're going to get 2 playoff games, and you'd like to think, if we're talking about the race for the 6th, that the playoff games are going to be raising it up a notch, but there'll be no context to them.
But still, it's a better deal than the Rugby Union have got for their European Cup, so we can at least be happy.
But that's what happened with Channel 4 in the end. Everybody lauded the coverage, but there was too much of a gap between games. It wasn't regular enough to pick up an audience, so the viewing figures declined as the season went on rather than went up, which was presumably the idea of it.
Yeah, I think it's hard for a broadcaster if you're going to... Cup competitions are fine, but if you're going to have a league, it really almost has to be on every week, to be quite honest, to have a thread.
Or at least make something out of your highlights, which they don't do anything with. No. Which the sport doesn't do anything with, and again, that's all levels. As look at the Women's Super League fixtures on Sunday. Leeds York standout fixture. Where is it? I'll say this now, and it might end up being on the Sportsman. Where it's Tuesday evening. Where's the game? Hopefully Leeds let me in, because I'm going to have to email.
You might be the only one there if the fans of the wheelchair and the men's have disappeared.
Send my accreditation email off, because it's not guaranteed. Just because you're accredited doesn't mean you'll get let in.
Should you be let in if you're accredited?
Not all, but I've never said before when I was at Wakefield, I was fully in favour of banning some people from the ground, but they didn't listen to me. In the Championship, which Wakefield have won. They've won the League Leaders' Shield.
Why was it presented at Halifax?
I've no idea. That seems daft, doesn't it? Because A, it bumps up their attendance for their IMG score, so that's no good. And B, you would have it at home.
Why would they do that?
They did, but why would they do that?
Bizarre.
Well,
when
Wakefield have got home games, Wakefield have got home games.
Why did Leeds Rhinos wheelchair team get the League Leaders' Shield after the game the other week when they secured it? If they did.
I've never heard anything like that before, where you have games left in the season and you're at home.
Those, and especially when it's the League Leaders' Shield, so it's not as if it's a cup final or anything. I hope Leeds wheelchair team, when they get their medals, when they get the Shield next week, get medals. If not, then again, we're going to kick off about that. So Wakefield won 48-6 away at Halifax. Barrow 20, Swinton 18.
That was a heartbreaker for Swinton.
Dewsbury 10, Whitehaven 18 as we started with. Doncaster 4, Bradford 18. Doncaster led up until the 65th minute of that one, but late tries from the Bulls saw them home. Featherstone 22, Toulouse 10. Another loss for Toulouse. For Featherstone, James Lockwood has revitalised Fev, says Les. So there you go. 22 points to 10.
Well, it's really interesting that 3 points separate 5 clubs in the playoffs. So the finishing, apart from the fact that York could still muscle their way in, the finishing positions are by no means settled behind Wakefield.
Widnes 35, Sheffield 20 and York 37, Batley 6. So this week in the Championship it's Bradford Dewsbury on Friday night. Well,
Mark Sawyer derby.
Yeah. Toulouse Sheffield on Saturday.
Big game for Sheffield now.
Sunday.
They've lost a few on the bounce, haven't they, Sheffield?
Well,
a few in recent weeks.
Is it coincidence that Mark Aston is not there at the moment?
When's that going to be sorted? We don't know.
It's supposed to be mid-August, but obviously it's rolled on into earliest mid-September.
When's Alan Kilshaw? Anything else that's happened in Rugby League this year that still needs to be sorted? On Sunday, Batley Widnes, Doncaster Halifax, Featherstone Barrow, Swinton Wakefield and Whitehaven versus York. I'm assuming that Featherstone, because they do play at Post Office Road or whatever it's called these days, their women will be playing before their men's game, because they're quite good at that.
They own that ground.
Because they're playing Barrow. It's like they're playing the same team at the same time. How did that happen?
Double bubble.
I think Barrow will win one of those games. Huddersfield St Helens, Leeds York and Wigan Warrington, the other games in the Women's Super League this week, so see how those go. League 1, which is nearly finished. Keighley 40, Hunslet 22, Oldham 72, Cornwall 0, Rochdale 28, North Wales 10, and Workington 46, Newcastle 0. This week it's Midlands versus Hunslet on Saturday.
Congratulations to the Midlands for making the playoffs for the first time in their history. And Jake Mamo still to play for them.
When you put X's next to people's names, like when they make the playoffs like they do in America. North Wales versus Cornwall, Oldham Workington, and Rochdale versus Keighley on Sunday. So Oldham will have clinched the League Leadership before their game against Cornwall, but were presented with it. So they could have... There's no logic to any of this, is it? That's a simple bloody thing. Give the team a trophy at home when they've got the chance to get the majority of people in.
Yep. Well, it makes it another event, doesn't it?
We're stupid sometimes, aren't we? We're really stupid about these things. That are really simple.
Well,
don't even need a helicopter.
Go back to like the wheelchair on Sunday.
Where's Blake Solly's helicopter? We don't. Where's that gone? With Rishi Sunak. Has anything else happened, or do we need to talk about anything else? Can we upset anyone before we finish?
It's not 7:30 yet, so I can't bring you the big transfer news.
You know, I was looking at the time and I thought we're not going to make it to 7:15, and we 7:10. I think we're done almost. I can't think of anything else that's happened. What exciting game have you got this week, James?
I have Catalan against Wigan.
Oh,
great game.
It's not that'd be good.
8:00 kick-off though. Here 9:00 in Catalan.
Yes.
That's late, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd have to have your dinner before rather than after. But no good if you're a
No,
referee.
the French will eat their dinner after. They're eating really late.
Oh, no.
Over there, so.
I've had a meal.
Foggin Johnson banned.
Yeah, I'd love to know why some
years.
people get 2 years for cocaine and some people get 1. And also, rugby league players, you know, it doesn't take that long to get out of your system. So,
you're not condoning that kind of behaviour.
No, I'm not condoning anything.
We need to translate that story into Mexican, isn't it? Go back to the top of the show. It's
we're still number 1.
The drug cartels and
the one in Colombia.
Yeah.
Colombia. What's the story in Australia with the Manly player wants to give his wage back and can't? What's going on there?
I think he's just trying to be again.
Does he want to be like an Uber?
They were never
Chris Radlinski.
Never going to accept.
Play for free,
but,
like Chris Radlinski.
He's just a good guy, isn't he? Tommy Turbo.
Are you off to Vegas?
I haven't even thought about it. I haven't even made arrangements to go to London, so I'm happy. I do know there's a new book out by Rob Burrow and Kevin Simpson.
Oh, it's here.
Which again I can only but commend to everybody to get a copy.
I've got a copy already, and I've read it to Harris. He enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's a lovely story, beautifully told, exactly what you'd expect about friendship and what matters most in life for kids. So I would commend that. Christmas is coming. The Rob Burrow Centre hopefully will be getting fat.
Yeah, it's good. I'd recommend it. And talking of books, Ian Smith,
yes,
former Super League referee, has a book coming out in the next couple of weeks.
He has. Available only on PayPal, so you'll need to find the link.
Yeah.
Although I might persuade him he should really put some copies into an independent bookshop.
Yeah, I can give you his number and you can drop him a text. I'm sure he'd be interested. But I think it'd be a good read. Not many referees do books.
Is he going to tell the truth, do you think, or nothing but the truth?
Well, I don't know. That's always the question, isn't it, when somebody writes an autobiography? How much do you actually
heroes
tell?
and villains? Who's going to be in which column?
As long as he doesn't slag off current referees on Twitter, then he's all right, isn't he? That'd be a bad thing to do, wouldn't it? If you win that. By the way, because someone else of this parish has got their own top trumps card. I don't know if you saw her parading around Ellen Road. When are you going to get your own? You said they should do a ref set.
Top trumps.
Yeah.
Oh right.
I mean, okay. I don't know what they'd rate you out of on
yellow cards given.
Number of penalties given.
Yeah.
I had the record there, so somebody might want that one.
Yeah. So
number of games of refereed in Super League. Yeah, there's quite a few
I
categories.
think pretty high up.
Yeah.
Because there are referee fans out there, aren't there? Masochists.
Yeah, weird. Weird.
They wear shirts to the games and stuff. I don't know.
Well, I was telling you the other day, Toronto, when you used to go to Toronto, you actually used to get cheered. Not ironically, but actually cheered. Team ref. Yeah, it was fantastic. They had banners and everything
running
ready
around
for the
together.
Ref.
Yeah, 3 cheers for the ref.
Yeah, no wonder Rugby League we left there.
Are we in on Monday?
I think
there's
so.
no reason. You might be.
I might be here, might not. I've even picked up a lead through this show. I was telling Phil at the weekend. A listener contacted me directly.
What?
Yeah.
So we aren't even starting the
Not only a
advertising
listener,
on the
but a
programme.
listener with a multi-million-pound house.
No, it's not.
I'm joking.
No, it's not. But we were very grateful for that.
Do you mean we get like people who've got money and stuff listening to the podcast? Oh, God. It's not right, is it? Thank you for watching and for your input today. Back on Monday, then back at the normal time, and we will see you for that then.